Greetings and welcome to Let's Talk About Books, baby, where we talk with your favorite LGBTQ authors. This is Anita Kelly, and my guest today is Sheri Lewis Wohl. Hi, Sheri.
Hi there.
How are you?
I am really good. Thank you.
Awesome. I'm so glad to hear that. And thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Well, absolutely. So it is the beginning of October, and back in August, which really was only 2 months ago, your most recent novel, titled The Artist, was released. Can you tell us about that book?
I sure can. Yeah, The Artist it was fun to do. I live in Eastern Washington State, but I set this particular book in Central Washington in a town called Moses Lake. My grandparents actually lived there, so I thought, you know what? It's time to set a book in Moses Lake.
So it's a real town.
It is a real town, yeah. And if you know the area, you may recognize a few of the places that I mention in the book.
Okay, awesome.
And the artist is actually someone who's hiding in plain sight. But like pretty much all of my books have that little weirdness in it. And for her, the weirdness is that she's a child prodigy artist. And she paints, or was a child prodigy, paints the faces of either murdered women or soon to be murdered women. But she's gone through a number of years while she's been hiding and that it didn't happen, and thought that it was all over with. And then all of a sudden it starts to happen again in Moses Lake. And so she wants to do what she can to help. And so that brings her into contact with the detective on the Moses Lake Police Department. And together they have to figure out who's killing people before they get killed.
Okay. So your protagonist, the artist, does she see these people like in her dreams or something? Or are they?
It's more like she blacks out.
Oh.
And when she comes to, the face is on a canvas.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's freaky. All right.
Yeah.
All right. So now I totally understand what you're talking about when you say has a weirdness to it. Like
always. Yeah. I've tried to write normal, didn't really work for me. So I just gave up and said, this is what I do.
So when you say you try to write normal, what does that mean? Does that, like, I know that, a lot of your novels, if not all of them, kind of fall into that paranormal and urban fantasy genre. So is that what you're referring to?
Well, yeah. And like early on, I did a couple of books that were just more really traditional. And, it was fun and it was great, but it wasn't me really totally.
Okay.
And so finally I just had to let go and say, this is really who I am and what I write and what I like. And that's what I'm going to do. And people seem to like it too. So here we are.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad you found your niche.
Yeah.
And when did you start writing in that genre? Like when did you realize, hey, this like regular old contemporary romance isn't working for me?
Yeah, it was probably, I've always done a little bit of it. But it was probably about 16, 17 years ago, well, maybe 18 years ago, when I finally said, you know what, even when I try not to put things that go bump in the night into my books, they still creep in. So why am I fighting this? I need to let this free.
Okay.
And so I did, and I have never really looked back.
Awesome. And what is it about, this urban fantasy or paranormal kind of romance that draws you to it?
Even when I was a little kid, I liked scary movies. I liked ghosts and vampires and werewolves and even science fiction and all the things that when you look at the world as it is beautiful and great. But my mind tends to go with but what if hiding behind that tree is this? What if in that shadow there is this? What if there is more than what we see?
Mm-hmm.
And so that has always intrigued me. And I have a master's degree in 19th century Gothic literature.
There you go.
And I mean, I'm not the only one that thought that way. There have been people thinking that way for a really long time. So they were kind of kindred souls.
Yeah. That is very specific. 19th century Gothic literature.
Yeah.
Yeah, really, that is. I didn't know that existed.
Well, technically, the diploma says literature, but my specialty was 19th century Gothic.
Okay. So you've been really like dedicated to this for a long time then.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's been a part of me for a very long time.
So I have to ask, in your real life, do you find things that go bump in the night?
You know, I always say that there's that thing you see in the corner of your eye, and it's like I have a brother that passed away 10 years ago, and every so
I'm
often,
sorry.
yeah, it was yeah, not cool, but
Yeah.
nonetheless, I feel like there are moments when there he is in the corner of my eye, and I'm like, I'm not so sure he's not there.
Oh,
So,
that's so
yeah,
cool.
I don't discount anything.
No, I don't either. I don't either. Tell you a story. One time I was backing out of my brother's driveway and, I was looking backwards and I turned around to look back at his house and I saw my grandma Butterfield sitting there on his patio with her feet up and her hands just crossed, laying on her
Yep.
lap. And she's been gone since I was a baby. So,
Wow.
yeah, yeah, it was pretty wild. And I saw her as clear as day.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
yeah, freaky stuff, but cool stuff too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Sheri, what was your first published novel?
My first published novel was a book called Necuratal, which means the unclean ones. And so it kind of harkened back to one of my first loves, which is vampires.
Okay.
And so this is a paranormal group that hunt all sorts of preternatural creatures.
Okay.
But and it was super fun to write, a little more traditional. I mean, I say traditional because the main characters were a straight couple.
Mm-hmm.
So that was what made that one to me a little more traditional.
Okay.
But it still had all the paranormal elements, and it was actually it was a 3-book series, and so it was super fun to write.
Great. And was that with another publisher?
It was with another publisher. It was before I went to Bold Strokes, and it was actually that publishing company that I had written the first book, which was Crimson Vengeance, that Bold Strokes published. And I sent it in, I turned it in, and they came back and said, but in that book, the main characters were lesbians.
Mm-hmm.
And they came back to me and said, absolutely love this book. Don't know that we have a market for it, but we need to find you someone to publish this book because it's really good. And so that book actually went out to a number of places, including some of the big houses, who gave me the same feedback at the time. They said, we like this book. We don't know if we have a market for it.
Wow.
And then it was rad over at Bold Strokes. I finally sent it to them, and I thought, well, they won't like it because there was actually another straight couple in there too. They were kind of the secondary storyline, and I thought, well, they won't like it because it's got the straight couple. And Rad came back and said, love it. Let's publish.
Awesome.
I've been with them ever since.
Oh, that's fantastic. That really is.
Yeah.
That really is. So was the first time that you sent that to Bold Strokes, was that your first encounter with them?
Pretty much.
Okay.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. And I'm telling you that, I mean, I just love the whole company. It's been a great home for me. I've been very, very happy.
Oh, that's awesome. How many books have you published with them?
I think I'm on 16. What do we got? There's 10. Yeah, 16. I'm working on number 17.
Wow. So you have something in like a work in progress right now.
I do. I do. I have one called The Witch Finder
Oh,
that I'm getting close to turning it. It'll come out in 23.
okay. All right. We'll have to keep an eye out for that one.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and do you have anything lined up if that's coming out? I mean, it's October, so that's 2023 is soon.
Yes. Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah. I'm, typing a lot lately because it's due to go in about 2 months.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and then I do have another one lined up after that. I don't know if you are aware that I was a canine handler, human remains detection canine handler until recently.
Oh,
So you will see dogs pop up in my books a lot.
oh.
And so they had asked me if I would write another dog book. So I'm like, oh yeah, twist my arm. Okay.
That's a tough one, huh?
Yeah, yeah. So Buried Secrets will be coming after The Witch Finder.
Oh, great. Third Secrets. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Awesome. And so when you submitted, you had received some rejections, right, from some kind of mainline publishing houses, and
Yeah.
then Rad said yes, we'll do it, but it's almost like you didn't have hopes that she would publish it. Can you kind of describe what you felt like when you heard back? Like, how did that go down?
I was thrilled with that one, more so, I think, than anything else, because that was the first time I sort of threw caution to the wind.
Mm-hmm.
It just said, I am writing this book the way I want to write it, with the characters I want to write, and I'm going to say and do whatever in the hell I want.
Oh, wonderful.
Okay. So it was like, and it's a dark book, which tells you something about me because I am a little on the dark side.
Are you?
But it was just so much fun to write.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you could do that,
Yeah.
and it turned out really well.
That is,
and the fact that people liked it, it was like, oh, thank you.
That's like the icing on the cake, right?
Exactly.
Oh,
exactly.
Great. So have you been receiving good reviews on The Artist?
It's reviews are a funny thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I get reviews that say, I love this book and I could not put it down.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'll get reviews, the same book, that say, she's okay, but whatever. And one of them was, the romance is too slow a burn. So then I asked a few people I know. I'm like, I actually do that kind of intentionally.
Sure.
And the reason, I tell people all the time, the reason I do that, for me, it's because my books have to have a happy ever after. Even though this is all darkness and people die and weirdness is going on,
mm-hmm.
At the end of the day,
yeah,
my couple is going to be together, and I want them to walk away believing they're together forever.
I think people like to read that, people want that. Yeah.
And that for me is important. So when I'm working through the book, I want to make that attraction believable.
Yeah.
So that you do believe it at the end of the book. So sometimes it happens faster, sometimes it's slower. It depends on the character. So, but that's, and then I've had other people, when I asked them point blank, what did you think? They're like, no, that was cool. It was fine. I got it.
Yeah.
So I'm like, all right. So it's, reviews, I read them, but I try not to get too high or too low on them.
Yeah. Yeah, I could understand that. And I think that would be one of the most difficult aspects of being a writer, is having people critique your work.
Yeah, because some people are going to hate you no matter what you do. Some people are going to love you.
Yeah.
But I don't like everything I read, so I can't expect everyone to like me either.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, that's true. Good point. So, what has been like the most difficult scene for you to write? in all of your books, in all of your, 16 or 17 books that, um,
Oh, I know. I was going to say it's kind of a two-part question. There's overall
mm-hmm.
for all the books, the hardest thing for me to write are the sex scenes.
Yeah.
And for me, it's because I'm trying to make it not believable per se, but it's that same movement towards the happy ever after.
Mm-hmm.
I want to have the right mix between passion and that growing connection that's going to keep them there forever. So I try that's what makes it hard for me, because I want to make sure I'm getting that right.
That's a delicate balance, right? Because
it really is.
You have to build this relationship, right?
And
there's like this anticipation, to leading up to the sex scene. At least the first one. Yeah.
And then I would say the hard one to write in recent memory was one in the book Drawing Down the Mist, which was really is a full-on urban fantasy with vampires in it. But there's a scene at the very, very end of the book that I actually made myself cry.
Aww.
And but one of the reviews came back and said I would read that book all over again for that scene. And I'm like, okay, that was worth it. That was worth it.
Definitely. Oh my goodness. What, like, I can't think of any greater praise for
yes.
Right?
Yeah, that was one moment where I took the high and I enjoyed it.
Yeah. That's wonderful. Yeah, I know for me, like if I like a book, I would definitely, or a movie, I would definitely watch it over again,
Mm-hmm.
Read it over again.
Yep.
Yeah. A lot of people won't do that. Like once they're done with it, they're done with it,
Oh, not me.
No, me either. I want to go back and savor it,
Yep, exactly. I know it's coming. I don't care. I'm waiting for it anyway.
Yeah, definitely. Yep. Yeah. So what was your favorite scene to write?
Oh, the favorite scene to write. Oh, well, that one's a hard one.
Is it?
Because it's kind of like it's whatever I'm working on at the moment becomes my favorite.
Yeah. Yep.
And so like right now I'm working on the Witchfinder, and I've got the dark witches and I've got the light witches, and I'm getting to come up with spells, and so the whole thing is kind of my favorite scene at the moment. Okay. And then as I work through this one, it will become not my favorite because I'm having to go back over and over and over it again. And then the next one will be my favorite. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that leads me to another kind of aspect of writing. Going back over and over it is like this whole, I guess, necessary evil of self-editing.
Yes.
And I just attended actually with BSB a workshop webinar on self-editing.
Oh yes, yeah.
And some people were talking about how they will, like in their daily writing exercises, they'll go back and kind of edit what they wrote the day before they start on something new. And some people are like, no, I just like spew it all out, and then I go back and start from the beginning and just start editing. Like, what do you do, and what do you think is easiest for you?
For me, I have to do the latter there. I have to get it down.
Okay.
And I don't go back. I just start and go all the way through. Even if I get stuck, which I do periodically, I'll get stuck and I'll have to walk away for a few days while my mind works it out.
Mm-hmm.
And then I still pick up where I left off and I get to the end. And then I let it sit for a little bit, and then I go back and then I start going through. Okay. And then I'm making notes for myself. Or if I get to a part later in the text and I think, wait a minute, didn't I talk about this earlier? And then I'll jump back and
Okay.
start matching things up, hopefully. But I do not, in that initial draft,
Hmm.
I do not go back through stuff because I will get bogged down if I do.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's really important to get that initial draft done. And then I can start working through it again.
Yeah. That makes sense. I can see how if you were editing as you go, like I would think that would lead you down a rabbit hole and you would never
Mm-hmm.
progress, you know? Because you,
Definitely, that's what I would do. I would be down so many rabbit holes, I'd never get it done.
yeah. Yeah. I could see me doing that too. And like, do you typically end up like editing out a lot of your work or a little bit, or I don't know, how does that work for you?
Most of the time, I don't have to edit out a ton.
Okay.
I mean, you always do end up with stuff, or my favorite thing, and my editor, Shelley, slaps me up alongside the head for this one, but I like to repeat myself.
Okay.
I said, I think it's an outgrowth of growing up with all brothers, and I never felt like anyone was listening to me, so I had to tell them at least 5 times.
Amen, sister.
So Shelley over the years has been breaking me of that habit, and I'm much, much better than when I started. But yeah, so I end up having to edit out my repeats because as I go through the initial draft, I will do it every single time.
Mm-hmm.
So those have to, they have to go bye-bye.
Yeah.
And then sometimes it's a case of I've kind of switched gears a little bit as I went along.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have to line that up with where I ultimately ended up. So if I've got something in the beginning of the book that's not tracking with how I ended, I've got to clean that out.
Yeah.
And then I don't try to get too bogged down on the detail the initial time through either.
Mm-hmm.
So I start adding the detail as I go through. So hopefully people are getting a flavor of the time and the place and the environment and get the voices of the characters distinctive.
Oh wow. So you'll go back in and add like descriptions then of the
Yeah.
surrounding. Okay.
Yeah. Or if I'm working on something and I know that I'm being too brief,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't want to stop and get into that right now, I leave myself notes in the manuscript, usually in all capital letters, on what I want myself to do when I go back.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's good. That's a great idea. And I can imagine a scenario where if you're working on a book for a while, maybe you wrote something in chapter 1 and then when you get to chapter 10 you totally forgot that you already mentioned that, so you throw it in there again,
Right.
not knowing, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Or sometimes that's just me.
Yeah.
I just repeat myself. Yeah.
Where are you in the birth order?
I am number 3.
Okay.
I am the lost child.
Okay. All right. And then how many are below you then?
Just one.
Just
I
one.
have 2 older brothers and 1 younger brother.
Okay. All right. All right. I have 5 older brothers.
Oh my gosh.
And I have 1 older sister too, but
Wow, and I thought 3 brothers was bad.
yeah, it's the cross you gotta bear.
I know. Yeah, I know.
Yeah. So what in writing, like how you've been writing for a number of years now. So like what got you started in the writing world, and like how do you stay motivated, like just to keep writing and coming up with new ideas?
Well, when I was a little kid, I would set up a little desk with my crayons and pretend to write books.
Oh my
And
God, that's so cute.
my grandfather was a really big reader, so I'd have my little desk set up at Grandpa's house. And when we moved them out of that house and I'm taking books off the shelf, here were all his books with my crayon marks inside of them.
Oh my God, that's awesome. Did you keep them?
He can. Well, no, I didn't keep them, but he did.
Yeah.
It was hilarious. But so, yeah, I always wanted to be a writer. And then I actually published some poetry while I was still in high school. So that was kind of my first time to see myself in print.
That's cool. Very cool. That's young.
Yeah. So, but it just took a lot of then, because it was like, I know I want to write novels because I have a problem. I mean, I've done a few short stories for Bold Strokes in the anthologies, but I have trouble staying short.
Okay.
And so I knew novels was what I wanted to do. And I just kept writing and writing for, ever. And I've been rejected, a million times, but I kept going, even though I don't know if you ever read Stephen King's On Writing.
No, I haven't.
It's a great, great book. Really is. And I was just about ready to give up. And I was reading this book, and I had just gotten a 2-page rejection letter from, I don't remember which publisher. It was one of the big houses, though. 2 pages.
Yeah.
And in his book, he talks about knowing when it's time to walk away. And he talked about things like what you're receiving back in response. And I thought, I just received a 2-page letter from a major publisher. I don't think it's time to walk away.
No.
And shortly thereafter, I sold my first book. Oh. So I always say it was Stephen King that kept me going.
There you go. There you go. Are you a big Stephen King fan?
Oh, huge. Huge.
Yeah, I can imagine that's right up your alley.
I went to Bangor, Maine a few years ago and I said I had to be in Portland, Maine, so I rented a car and drove to Bangor so I could go to the motherland and, go to his house and everything. That was cool.
Oh, that's great. So is that your favorite genre to read as well?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I like all the horror, paranormal, urban fantasy stuff. I like to read it as well as write it. Okay. I mean, I read pretty much everything, but that's where my heart lies.
Okay. So all right. So name 5 of your all-time favorite books.
Well, we're going to go with 5. We got to go back to my Gothic roots and say Dracula.
Okay.
Bram Stoker, that's the classic vampire.
Is that what got you started?
Yeah, and in fact, I wanted to write my thesis on Dracula, and my professor told me no because everybody's done Dracula. Ah. So he gave me Joseph Sheridan Le Fanu's book, Through a Glass Darkly.
Yeah.
And he said, I want you to read the story Carmilla. So I read Carmilla, and I called him and I said, am I reading what I think I'm reading? And he said, yes, you are. It's a lesbian vampire story.
So cool.
Written in 1872. And I'm like, I want to know why this man wrote this story. And so my thesis was on that story, and it actually got nominated for Outstanding Thesis of the Year. So
congratulations.
I know, that was super, super fun.
So why did he write a lesbian vampire book in 1872?
It's a long theory, but part of it was an ill wife. Part of it was a changing world that he was trying to make sense of. Okay. There were a lot of things that I felt flowed into, and it wasn't like so many others of the time, it wasn't titillation for him. Mm-hmm. There were a lot of more serious underlying reasons why this appealed to him.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So. Huh. But my next favorite was Daphne du Maurier's Rebecca.
Oh, okay.
That one I love just because it's got one of the great psychopathic characters in it, and Mrs. Danvers, and it's like such wonderful writing and kind of the mystery in it too.
Yeah. Okay.
Stephen King's The Stand is my favorite of all his books.
Wow. Okay.
Well, you can't be somebody like me without Interview with the Vampire.
Okay.
Good old Anne Rice.
Yeah.
So and then I really like Game of Thrones, George R.R. Martin.
Really?
Oh, love the Game of Thrones book. All 800 pages of every book.
Wow. Okay.
How he came up with those fantasies, I mean, and keep all those characters straight. I'm just in awe of what he did.
I've I've not read the books and I've not seen the show.
Yeah, I've read all the books. I haven't watched the shows as much. I've seen some of them, but it's the books. I read all the books. And like I say, they're like 800 pages long.
That's amazing.
But there's just so much going on and so many characters and dragons and just stuff. And it's like he keeps it all straight. It's impressive.
Yeah, he must have had a long character sheet.
He had to have an entire room with all those little threads going. Yeah.
Yeah. How about that? Huh. I didn't know that each book was so long. I had no idea.
Oh, yeah. They're huge.
So that makes sense then that your top 5 all are a little on that dark side.
I think pretty much they're all on the dark side.
Yeah. Okay. Oh. So, out of your books that you've written, who's your favorite character?
Oh, that would be Rhea Preston from my very first Bold Strokes books release, Crimson Vengeance. Actually, there's 4 books in that series, and she's in all 4 of them, but she's my hands down favorite character. Always will have a special place in my heart. She's a 500-year-old vampire.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
So what makes her your favorite? What gives her a special place in your heart?
Well, first of all, because that was the first character I got to write that I wanted. That's what I wanted. Okay. Really, really wanted that one. And she just is strong and powerful and kicks ass, takes names, saves the world, Mm-hmm. Okay. She makes you feel safe.
Okay. She's like a superhero.
Kind of, yeah. She's my little vampire superhero.
That's cool. That's great. I love it. That is so awesome. So, Sheri, your book, The Artist, is out now. It was released in August, and it is available right on Bold Strokes Books.
Yes.
And anywhere you buy books, right? And
right.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So I look forward to checking that one out. I haven't checked it out yet. So many books in so little time.
I know. I don't get as much chance to read as I like, except on airplanes. And I'm leaving in a week to go to DC again. And I'm like, yay, I get to read 2-3 books.
Cool. That's a long flight. So
it's a very long flight for me, which means I get at least 1 book on the way there and 1 on the way back, if not, 1.5 each way.
Nice. I just started reading Patricia Cornwell.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if you've ever read any of her stuff.
I have. Yep.
So I'm just reading her first one. I think I know who did it.
Yeah, hers are fun.
Yeah. So, all right. So, Sheri, that is about all the time we have today. But I just want to ask you if you have any parting words for our listeners.
Just happy reading, and I hope you get a chance to take a peek at The Artist.
All right. And where can folks contact you if they wanted to? Through Bold Strokes, right?
Through Bold Strokes, my website, which is SheriLewisWohl.com.
Okay.
And I'm also on Twitter and Facebook, all the regular places, Instagram. Okay. I'm not TikTok, sorry.
Okay. All right. Not TikTok savvy, huh?
No TikTok.
Okay. All right. So Sheri Lewis Wohl, and her latest release is The Artist. Check it out. It's available through Bold Strokes Books or anywhere else you find your books. Sheri, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Anita Kelly, and that's all for Let's Talk About Books, baby. Until next time, may your journey be lighthearted, peace be plenty, and be safe, folks.